when I was over there, and then I looked back and the line was 15, 20 deep.
It was a good thing. Okay.
That's which Frog's party
Well, as soon as RJ says we're ready to go, we're ready to go. We're ready?
on the hill, and he has all
Denver
those
always takes
fireworks.
longer.
They can see all the way to Portland. And they have fireworks. Last year, I didn't, but the year before that, I played patriotic music while the fireworks were going off.
Well, good evening and welcome to the July 5th Washougal City Council meeting. I will call the meeting to order and ask that you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Stevenson, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Costin,
Here,
Councilmember Russell, Councilmember McDaniel,
Here.
Councilmember Delavar,
Present.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Here.
Councilmember Morris,
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Thank you. I did receive a message from Councilmember Russell that he most likely would not make it to the meeting before we adjourn this evening.
I move that we excuse Councilman Russell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Russell from the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
There, none.
Okay. Any correspondence?
No.
Okay. With that, we will move to public comments. I've got a card from Mr. Hayward. Good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I guess I could remind you that this is the 200th anniversary of David Thompson coming down the Columbia River and surveying this land for the England. And if Lewis and Clark hadn't beat him by 6 years, you probably wouldn't have been saying allegiance to the American flag. But anyway, that's not why it's there. I think it was, 2-3 months ago, I came in and made a suggestion that perhaps to look into the feasibility of the overline power lines that Bonneville is planning on bringing go underground instead of overground when it comes through the city of Washougal. And contacted them and done some research on it. And that issue has been brought up so much, I think you could bring in a whole ocean-going container of studies that's been done on it. But essentially, in very simple math, it costs about 5 times as much to go underground as overground. So initially, when this was brought up, they said, oh, it costs too much. But I don't think they've considered how much additional land, and particularly view property, would be made available if that went underground, and if that was offset. So roughly, and this is a guesstimate, and Bonneville will provide me with information, but more important, the city of Washougal can request, and I see in a lot of areas they legally have to comply, but I don't think they would even object to it. But in the upcoming feasibility study, to request that they look at the feasibility of bringing the overhead lines underground and offset by the additional property that would be released for sale. In particular, some very expensive view properties up there where I live and all of that. And my guesstimate is it cost $1 million to put the towers up there, cost $5 million to come down the hill, and we'll probably have, even in today's market, about $6 million worth of view property available for construction. And so I'm recommending that the city make a request of Bonneville and ask them to include in their upcoming fall feasibility study the feasibility of taking it underground from the top of the hill to down to the river. Because I look on several of the maps, and there's been a lot of alternative routes argued and discussed. The one change that hasn't been made is they're still going to come down, go to the river, and go straight across to Troutdale. That part of the different maps has not changed. So that's the end of my proposal. I'll follow up on it. You may want to contact the city of Camas because it'll come across there. but the View property is really in the city of Washougal. So while I'm here and got a few more minutes, I read a lot about ethics committee, and I think I and most of the other people are more concerned about what you say than rather how you say it. As an old Idaho farm boy that worked his way through college in the logging camps of northern Idaho, I was in the first or maybe second year of college before I even learned that mother wasn't a hyphenated word. So, don't worry. And a little advice from the elderly, don't worry about what people say about you or think about you, because most people probably don't. So, anyway, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Hayward, thank you very much, and thank you for the update. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to address council? Mr. Olson.
Harvey Olson, 3903 R Street. This is a follow-up on last council meeting, an article in the paper by Councilmember Shoemaker. And Councilmember Shoemaker has it correct, in my opinion, when it comes to when to use your reserve funds. Let's compare the city to a working person. Economists have given advice to always have at least 3 months or more of monthly income and savings to be used for emergencies. In today's economic troubles, if and or when a working person has their hours cut, should they use their savings to continue their current lifestyle and even add to it, making unneeded purchases or cut out unneeded items, such as too many cable TV shows, too often to restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Same with the city. The reserve should only be used for emergencies, not for adding projects that are not necessary or needed. If you spend reserve funds now and the economy stays the same or gets worse, what will happen in 2013 when projected income is much less than the cost of running the city, and most or all reserve funds have already been spent? When or if that happens, the cry will be to lay off city employees. Historically, the first occupation listed by city's budget writers to be laid off have been the first responders, police, or fire. They should always be the last to be cut. If any layoffs were to be contemplated in the future, this will raise some eyebrows. My suggestion would be to start layoffs with the administrative staff. If they knew that any future layoffs would start with them, I would think they would look at all spending projects new and in the future with a very critical eye. For now, please follow the advice given by economists, cut out the fat, no new or unneeded projects, and save the reserve fund money for when it is needed. By doing so, hopefully the city's financial future will have more sunshine and less rain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Anyone else from the public wishing to address council? Okay, moving into the consent agenda. This evening, we have a consent agenda consisting of 10 items. Minutes of the joint workshop meeting with the City of Camas and the Port of Camas Washougal of May 23rd. Our council minutes of June 20th. Our workshop minutes of June 27th. Our regular accounts payable claims in the amounts of $334,087.57. Agenda Bill 8711, setting a public hearing on the E Street rezone. Agenda Bill 8811, setting a public hearing on surplus items. Agenda Bill 8911, a interlocal agreement between Washougal and the Port of Camas Washougal for the SR-14 Phase 2 conceptual design. Agenda Bill 9011, a professional service agreement with PB Americas for the SR-14 improvements at Washougal River Road, 27th Street, 32nd Street, and conceptual design and environmental critical issues. Agenda Bill 9111, cost reimbursement agreement between Washougal and the Department of Ecology, and Agenda Bill 9211, a memorandum of understanding with the International Association of Firefighters of Camas and Washougal.
Mr. Mayor, I ask that items 2, 7, and 8 be pulled from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda consisting of items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10.
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
sorry, I
Baker?
had trouble hearing Mr. Delavar's, was he pulling these items from the agenda
Yeah, items 2,
Okay.
7, and 8.
for discussion?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got, do we have any objections to the approval of the remaining consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I just only want to make one comment, and that's on Agenda Bill 9211. Thanks, David, for changing that wording in concerning the volunteer firefighters. I actually went back down and talked with the chief today about that particular item, and it really boils down to that whether they start up another volunteer program in Camas and to what degree they're going to use Washougal's volunteers. So I just wanted to make sure that although it's a memorandum of understanding for the union, it also included the volunteer firefighters in there, and that seems to have been taken care of for us, so.
Excellent. Okay, hearing no other objections, we will approve the rest of the consent agenda. Item number 2, council minutes of June 20th, 2011. Michael?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass the Washougal City Council minutes of June 20th, 2011.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve the June 20th city council meeting minutes. Council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, on page, see, the second sheet of paper on the back side, I need to make one minor correction. The second paragraph, I think, needs to be amended. I move to strike the first motion on that page, which states to table the item pending further discussion and resolution of items not discussed at the prior workshop. And
I'm sorry,
Second.
which one is that one on?
What?
so it's on the second page.
Okay.
So,
Your
the
motion is
reverse
to
side.
strike, is that correct?
Yeah, the motion, yeah. So, that one.
And I second it.
Okay.
Could you explain why?
Certainly, I assume that the motion is recognized?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. The reason that I moved to strike this is because when a motion has no second, it technically is not a motion. Somebody can move something. If a council member moves an item, but it does not receive a second, it's not a motion under Robert's rules. So that's my objection, is that it really shouldn't be listed as motion, technically speaking. That was my reasoning behind this. That way, it's not considered, it's not voted on, and it reflects that accurately.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second to strike that entire portion of the minutes.
Wait a minute. Could we get a ruling from council on, I'm sorry, but
Even though the motion was made, and you recognize the fact that there was a motion made,
No, there is, my understanding is that for it to be a motion that is considered, the question that's considered, it has to be seconded. But if only one member of a body says, I'd like to do this, and there is not at least another second member that agrees to discuss it, then it's not an item for discussion, and it's technically not, at that point, a question, if you will.
but shouldn't it be identified that there was a motion made and not seconded? And no further movement on it?
My understanding is Robert's, I should have brought the rules tonight in anticipation of that, I'm sorry, but my understanding is that it generally is not recorded at that point. But do we have any guidance?
I'd have to go get we'd have to go get the manual and research that. I'm not
I'm not familiar off the top of my head whether the Roberts gives guidance on how to reflect that occurrence in minutes or to not reflect that occurrence in minutes. I'm familiar with it being recorded in minutes, but it doesn't mean that that's correct.
My suggestion would be that possibly we table this item.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we table this item until we make it the first item of new business.
Second.
Okay, Dave?
I believe Robert's rules, as a general concept, supports the idea that minutes consist of decisions made. And since this motion failed to get a second, it wasn't considered a motion. It's not a record of decisions made, so it probably doesn't belong in the minutes.
But it was an action, though, correct, that night?
There was an attempt.
Yeah, we could probably sit here all night and debate what we believe is in Roberts. We certainly have access to other folks who can tell us correctly how to reflect or not reflect it, so. I believe I've got a motion and a second, Jennifer,
Yes,
to
that's right.
table the item. Other council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 8911, Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchasing Agreement between the City of Washougal and the Port of Camas-Washougal for the SR-14 Phase 2 conceptual design. Mike?
If it's appropriate to have the Public Works Director introduce it, would that be appropriate first before our discussion?
We certainly can. Jim?
Staff is submitting an intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement between the City of Washougal and the Port of Camas-Washougal to engage PB Americas on the conceptual design of the SR-14 Phase 2 project. Due to changes in the former design of this project, a new design must be completed in order to move forward in requesting funding for the project. The project the Port has agreed to enter into this agreement with the city for the following tasks: Washougal River Road Engineering, 100% City of Washougal; 27th, 32nd Street Engineering, 50% City of Washougal, 50% Port of Camas-Washougal; Project Management and Environmental Review, prorated split based on engineering effort percentages, which calculates 70% City of Washougal, 30% Port of Camas-Washougal. Total for the City of Washougal, $30,660. Total for the Port of Camas-Washougal, $15,015. Recommended actions: authorize the mayor to sign the intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement for the conceptual design of the SR-14 Phase 2 project.
So move.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement for the conceptual design of the SR-14 Phase 2 project. Council discussion? Michael?
Mr. Mayor, as much as I really want this project to go forward, I will not be able to vote for it tonight, in large part because the money that's going to be expended for this project does come out of reserves at a time when we weren't able to budget for it previously. I mean, times are tight, as we all know. And I certainly support this project, and I hope that eventually it does come to pass. But for right now, for us to pulling it out of reserves when we still don't know what's coming down the road, that's something that I can't support. So I'll be voting a no against it, regretfully.
Other council discussion? David?
I'm struggling with this same thing. I've got the same problem. It's coming out of reserves. This is the budget amendment it's coming out of, the one in May?
That's correct.
Thank you. And my apologies for not notifying you that I was going to ask that question tonight, Jim. I don't like to catch you flat-footed there. It occurs to me that we need this project to encourage economic development in the area. Given the economy that we've got right now and the future of the economy, that constitutes something of an emergency. So I I'm having the same trouble that Councilman Delavar has, supporting something that's coming out of reserves at a time like this. On the other hand, I see the requirement for the economic development. Until we get those intersections taken care of down there off of 14, nothing of any size is going to locate here. And that's my concern. I wish I had a good answer for this.
Any other, Molly?
Just a point of clarification. So this does say that it has been budgeted?
Through the-
And this was passed by the council as the budget amendment, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, in May already.
I just want to underline that if any of us have any concern about jobs, or in fact any other kind of economic development, imagine what difference it would make if we had something like a Fred Meyer store there east of Pendleton. The sales tax revenue would be huge. You talk about economic development and city budgets. This is one of those things that, you know, when times are tough, maybe you decide to go back to school and take money out of your pocket to do that. Or any other investment into the future of the city. This is a relatively modest investment to carry that forward. And so I, especially given that the decision to put the money into the budget was already made in May, this seems to me to make a lot of sense.
Yes, actually, I consider this a very necessary project, and I have a question for Assistant Public Works Director Dunn. How long has it been since we had this particular area studied and had any sort of critical issues study done with the Highway 14 area coming out to our way? Can you just reiterate that for us?
Yeah, last time it was studied was in 2005 with our previous capital facility plan for transportation.
Thank you. Okay, and I do consider this, once again, to be necessary. I was one of the council members that voted in favor of the budget amendment. I consider all of the projects with regard to the budget amendment necessary. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Any other council? Dave?
A couple of key points. The budget decision in May brought money from the reserve for this and other projects. Wasn't necessarily a wise decision in my thinking. The other thing is that amending the budget to fund things from the reserves and then discussing them as though they were part of the original budget, I think is not very clear to the people of the city. I want the people of the city to understand that these monies are coming from reserves, and the reserves are being spent down. Having said that, I'm going to vote for this for a number of reasons. One of them is, as you just pointed out, Rod, it's a relatively small amount, although small amounts can add up. 30,000 here, 30,000 there, pretty soon you're talking about real money. Your money. All we do is manage it. And the other thing is, as Councilman Greenlee pointed out, Fred Meyer has refused to come out here until we solve the problem of 27th and 32nd Street. Okay, let's solve the problem. We've got the problem today because we took it off the list last year because somebody was going to put a roundabout out there, which was a really stupid decision. And we took it off the list to get away from the roundabout. Okay, let's clean up the mess. Michael, it breaks my heart to disagree with you on this one, but I will, because I do consider it an emergency. Our economy's in the dumps, and this is a way to get it out of it. That constitutes, in my mind, an emergency. worthy of spending reserves for, as long as they're small amounts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement for the conceptual design of the SR-14 Phase 2 project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. And Agenda Bill 9011, a professional services agreement from BP Americas for the conceptual design and environmental critical issues on the SR-14 improvements at Washougal River Road, 27th Street and 32nd Street. Mr. Dunn.
Staff is submitting a PSA from PB Americas for the conceptual design and environmental critical issues for the intersection and SR-14 road improvements. The city is working in conjunction with the Port of Camas-Washougal on this project. The city will be the leading agency on this matter and is responsible for contracting PB Americas for this work. PB Americas will develop concept-level alternatives for transportation improvements on SR-14 at the intersections of 27th Street, 32nd Street, and Washougal River Road. In addition, they will review the conceptual plan for the 27th Street BNSF Railway Overpass. This road project is being designed for a state facility, and future coordination with Washington State Department of Transportation and the Regional Transportation Commission will be necessary. Tasking will include project management and agency coordination, engineering concepts and constraints, SR-14 at Washougal River Road, 27th Street and 32nd Street, affected environment baseline and critical issues assessment. Recommended actions are to authorize the mayor to sign the PB Americas Professional Service Agreement for the conceptual design and environmental critical issues on the SR-14 improvements at Washougal River Road, 27th Street and 32nd Street.
So move.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the BP Americas Professional Services Agreement for the conceptual design and environmental critical issues on the SR-14 improvements at Washougal River Road, 27th Street and 32nd Street. Council discussion. Michael? Brett?
Jim, would you tell us all whether, having got hung up on the terminology of a roundabout on Highway 14 and having our name taken off of the state list, are we still back? Are we able to get back on that list in any way, shape, or form to help with funding of some of these, what we're identifying in these two agenda bills?
Yes, I think that's a possibility. You know, the first step obviously is conceptual design, and then we could move forward with appropriations.
Well, at the time, I think this is exactly what we were trying to talk about, was that these things would change in the year to come, even though we were hung up on the terminology of a roundabout. This is still another concept, and we would have to go through this. I just want to make sure that we were potentially back on that list again for state funding.
Yes, we are back on the list. Like I say, it is a state facility, so the state is required to actually add that to the list, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, et cetera. It is included in our capital facility plan, so we're taking those steps to move in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Jim, I need assurance here that we're not going to wind up with a design for a roundabout.
Yes, that's not what Parsons Brinkerhoff will be working on. They won't be working on conceptual design for roundabouts on
Okay,
SR-14.
I appreciate that. I wanted to make two other comments, if I might. One of them is, it's a privilege to sit on a panel here with somebody like Councilman Delavar, who is a man with very definite opinions, and he sticks to his opinions. He researches them very carefully. He's an ethical man, and he's not afraid to vote no. It's an honor to sit on a panel with people like that. On this one, though, I'm going to disagree with him for the same reasons as the last one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Any further discussion? Molly?
Just a point, I know that A number of years ago, we actually did have on our transportation long-range plan, this 27th Street overpass, and it basically got bumped just because of the expense. But now projecting into the future, in the next 5 years or so, it's anticipated that the number of trains coming through Washougal is basically going to double. So it'll go from 40 to 80 with the addition of a potash plant in Vancouver, and with rail transportation becoming more cost-effective, as assuming that gas prices stay relatively high, maybe not as high as they are right now, but high. Can you imagine what Washougal is going to be like with only one crossing over the railroad tracks? I mean, now I see traffic at 11 o'clock in the morning that's backed up on 32nd Street all the way into Highway 14. So I think it's essential that we start working on this, on all of these projects, knowing that it takes quite a bit of time to actually move the process forward. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that, not only is the Port of Vancouver going to build that huge potash facility that will basically load bulk fertilizer onto ships for transport to principally to Asia. But I don't know how much you follow the news, but there's a lot of talk about a coal export facility either at Longview or at St. Helens in Oregon. There are a couple of other possibilities. This was a major topic of discussion at the Association of Washington Cities annual conference because it would have huge impacts on the state of Washington. If you ran, the current estimates are, it would add 40 unit trains, coal unit trains a day to the Columbia River route, and that the empties would then go back over Stampede Pass. Reason being that the heavy loaded trains really can't make the Stampede Pass trip, but the empties can. So they run a circular route. Now, I don't know the numbers offhand, but roughly 20 trains a day come through Washougal right now. And so if you up that to 60 or 80, this crossing becomes a huge issue, and getting funding for it from state and federal and maybe even railway sources becomes absolutely critical going forward, given the time fuses on these kind of things. It's not like you can wave your magic wand and have it done in a year. And so this is crucial infrastructure.
Yeah, actually, I believe I was told that some of those trains by the year 2015 will be 8,500 feet long. That's 1.5 miles long. So it's, if they happen to slow down to 5 miles an hour, we can only imagine how long that backup is going to be once they start and stop, you know, and they do that out here. So it's going to be real critical that we do something to get a second overpass over that trains. And it has a lot to do with public safety. Right now, with the construction at Washougal River Road and East Street, the construction outfit is doing really a great job in the fact that even if it's just gravel being prepared to be paved, they've allowed the fire trucks to drive right over it and keep going, and they'll repair if there's any damage done to it. But that's the only route we have over the railroad tracks right now, and we have to do something different when those trains become 1.5 miles long. So,
Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the PB America's professional services agreement for the conceptual design and environmental critical issues on the SR 14 improvements at Washougal River Road, 27th Street and 32nd Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. Moving to new business, the only item that we have is the appointment.
Table motion.
I'm sorry?
We have that table motion,
Table it till next week.
don't we? Didn't we table that?
The Appointments Committee
No,
recommendation?
no, the question about the minutes?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we just tabled it until later tonight.
Nope.
But, okay, fine,
I
thank
don't think
you.
anybody's had time
was-
to make that call yet, so
I was
we'll be bringing it back. to you.
misapprehended.
Under new business, item number 1, the Appointments Committee recommendation for the Camas Washougal Economic Development Association. Councilmember McDaniel and I met on Friday. We had 2 council members who had expressed interest in the position, Councilmember Russell and Councilmember Greenlee. And Councilmember McDaniel and I unanimously are recommending to you, Councilmember Greenlee, to sit on the Camas Washougal Economic Development Association. That would be wonderful.
Motion to approve Councilman Greenlee to the Economic Development Association.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to appoint Councilmember Greenlee to the Camas Washougal Economic Development Association. Any council discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I believe motion carried, but do you want to do a roll call just to be sure?
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
No?
Councilmember Daniel,
Aye.
Councilmember Yellow,
No.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, any additional public comments? Anyone from the public wishing to address the council?
This is a quick one. Harvey Wilson, 3903 R Street. Last night, I had occasion to be part of a response by the fire department. The house next door to me, all of a sudden, I'm sitting in our TV room, and we see floating down these large embers of burning material into our yard. So I went out and I saw the house next door. I couldn't see the source of the fire, but it was coming from the garage area, which I couldn't see from my backyard. So we called in a house fire. I've been to many house fires. I would assume that it would have been a house fire because there was a huge amount of smoke and embers coming, and it just looked like a garage fire. So we called in, and the response was exceptionally fast. I would say within 3.5 minutes, we had a police officer there blocking the street. The fire department first engine was there. Chief Schumacher showed up, and he was in his car leaving the station, and he always responds to house fires anyway. So he showed up, took charge, and I stood back and I watched, because I have been to many house fires the 6 years I was in the fire department in Seattle, and I observed a man that really knows his job. And I was proud of the way he handled the situation. He directed his firemen. First, he went right up to where the fire was. It was not a building, it was the bushes right next to the garage that had been set afire by boom. And there was several of these pieces of wood about like this with something on top of it that had been burned out and laying around in the area, one in my backyard and another one out in the street, and the chief said he found another one. I think everybody in here should give kudos to the chief and the fire department and the police department, because everybody acted in a very coordinated fashion. It was really, really a pleasure to stand back and watch, because I've been at both sides of the fire, either as a fireman or as a police officer, directing traffic or crowd control. And everybody there just, it was really, really wonderful to see. And as one of the civil service commissioners, I had to get up and compliment the chief, the fire department, and the police department for the efforts and the performance that they did last night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Mrs. Terrell?
Marilyn Tyrrell, 950 G Street. I hope the minutes will note that that was a short comment from Mr. Olson. East Street, because of the work just east of, Chase, is it called Chase now, the Chase Bank?
Yes.
There is now only 3 lanes. Despite your concerns, the 3rd lane is going to be the one in the future, and it works just fine. Traffic's going like this, and people in the middle get to do what they want, so I'm impressed. I also want to tell you, Mr. Dunn, that people are coming through the intersection and making a U-turn into G Street. It's very creative. Okay. 5th item on here is the agenda bill set public hearing for East Street rezone, and you passed that over. I couldn't hear well, but what happened to number 5?
It passed. That's just setting the hearing itself on a future agenda,
July 18th.
July 18th.
But you didn't tell us that. Naughty, naughty. Okay, July 18th is the public hearing.
Correct. And there's information back on the tables just outside that has it, and it'll appear in the agendas as well.
You mean if I came on time, I would have seen that?
Even if you came last week or even before you leave tonight, it'll still be there.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
You bet. Thank you, Marilyn. Good evening, Don.
On what you passed on 8711, the hearing for that, I reviewed the comments and I couldn't find the answers to 2. There were comments received from the public. One was from Sarah Millen and another one was Kathy McMullen. And sort of the essence of it was, why do we need this capacity? What is the existing capacity? How much do we have? We're not being too successful at our buildings in Camas. So why do we want more of this commercial zoning? So I was hoping that maybe earmarking it now, that's something the staff could address, show us how much commercial capacity there is available, and address why they think they need it. I know the core is economic development, but that's not the only place you could have economic development. The other question I couldn't find an answer to was Gary Stolzenberg asked the group, asked you folks, if you had a conceptual design, why couldn't you approve the decisions one case at a time? So if something needed correcting, you correct it. And the only thing I'm requesting is, I think, the public hearing, that information would be very valuable to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, Joyce.
Joyce Lindsay, 950 H Street. I just want to tell you the fireworks were spectacular. It was a lovely evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom, yes.
Just a comment. Someone was driving me home a couple weeks ago now, and we went up 6th Street, and there was a train out there, and of course we got blocked because cars came in behind us, and we sat there for 45 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
With the trains that are going by right now. So I understand what you're saying, that in the future things are probably going to go downhill quickly. But it was a full 45 minutes before the train went away and we could go. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
By the way, I'm Tom Anderson, 740 East Street, sorry.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to address council? Yes, Jared.
Jared Adams, 905 A Street. I just came from the port meeting, and as you may or may not know, the port is considering approximately $10 million of safety improvements to Grove Field. They've stated they'll be making their decision on whether or not to become a FAA obligated airport at their meeting in 2 weeks. What that means is basically the FAA gives them 95% of the money for the improvements in exchange for the port agreeing to operate the airport as an airport for 20 years. And I know several of the council members have flight experience, and they can probably tell you that the airport can be an important economic asset for the community. And I would just encourage all of you to know the details about what's going on and tell the port your opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Any other members of the public wishing to address council? Okay, seeing none. The only item that I have for this evening is a quick update off of yesterday. I certainly echo Joyce's comments that we had us a party. That was for the council members that were down there. Hopefully you had some chance to talk with folks and wander about and see what was happening down there, but it was a very full park. It was a wonderful fireworks display that Western put together for us, and I think I had one of our security people back in front of me at like, I want to say the fireworks ended at 10:20, and people immediately started hitting the gates leaving, and at 11:10, they were back to report that WSP had already cleared the intersections and were heading out of there, and everybody was out of parking lots. So that part of it worked very well. I understand from the port staff that I believe there were 7 different areas we were parking on the Hamilton property, and we had encroached into the 5th area. So there was still some parking left to be had. But by the time the fireworks got going, those areas filled in very nicely, and I think our scouts and other folks that were out there helping move people around did it very, very well. But I heard a ton of compliments all the way through. I know the chief was down there for quite a while. Councilman Morris was down there as well. We had a fire engine on site. We had our police officers down there. State Patrol was coming through on a regular basis as well. So I think it all clicked very well, and somehow the weather came out perfectly as well. So, Chief, do you want to do any little updates? I know you guys obviously had a very busy day yesterday.
Yeah, we not only were involved with the fireworks show, we had 3 personnel there. We had probably 4 brush fires, and we had the fire that Mr. Olson had talked about. And we went into Camas even a couple times on some of their fires as well. So it was very busy. And then to top it off, we went on to a odor of gas in a dwelling. And when the crews got there, the house was filled with natural gas. The dog was inside the garage and just went crazy from all the fireworks that bit into the gas line and tore it off. And so fortunately, the ceilings in the garage were of such height that all the gas just settled up there, or else the dog probably would have been asphyxiated. So, yeah, it got done about 3 a.m. as far as we did.
Well, tremendous jobs all the way around. I know certainly the police department was involved with the big show we had going. The fire, Public Works moving some signage and stuff back around for us on Friday, and then again today as well. So kudos to everybody that had a role in that. It was very encouraging to see. It was nice to see so many people there and so many families there and kids and everything else, and the oohs and ahs. And like I said, Western did a phenomenal job as far as what they had assigned for mortars in the display, and it was just a very cool place to be. So it was nice. I don't think I mentioned to you, Chief, but I got down there about 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and one of our fire crew that was on for the day was already down to do some inspections, do some looking around, figure out paths in and out, all that type of stuff. And they had a Camas battalion chief that was there with them as well, and they were already working in unison with each other and telling each other what was happening in both communities that they knew of throughout the day and coordinating from there. So that was nice to see something happen spontaneously even before we begin a trial consolidation, that the team members are already coming together.
Mayor, one last thing I failed to mention is that most of the calls that we responded to was our volunteers responding. They played really an active role yesterday, so that.
Good.
I think it's good thing to do.
Good. Thank you. Council comments. Molly?
Yes, I just came before this meeting from a Regional Transportation Council meeting. And so the major topic today was the CRC, the Columbia River Crossing Final Environmental Impact Statement, which has been released. And so it's one more step. I mean, we're still only 15% of the way through that process, so obviously we know that we don't have any funding secured. There's still so many steps to go through, but this is one more. So there is the possibility that maybe we can get somebody, one of the new members of the CRC force out here and do a joint meeting before to sort of explain it to all of us. There were 6,000 comments that were received on the draft environmental impact statement, and at least they tell us that every one of those was responded to, and they made a lot of changes between the draft and the final environmental impact statement. I do have it on CD, but it's like 350 pages of documentation. So this is one more step, and it'll be a long process. Certainly not a sure process, but it's incremental, so that's the next step.
Awesome.
And as well, I did meet, again, reacquainted myself with Rob Charles, who is our new city engineer, who started on Thursday. And he was sitting in the small conference room with John Roth, and he had books stacked up this high everywhere, getting an overview of what his job was cut out to be. So I think he'll be very, very valuable for us.
He's also going to be very busy.
Yes, very busy.
Molly, if you wouldn't mind working with Dave to try and get somebody scheduled from the CRC
Yeah.
organization, whoever the appropriate person might be to.
I'd
do
like
an
to get
update on
Nancy
that.
Boyd, because she's very straight shooter. She tells it like it is. She doesn't try to sugarcoat anything, so I appreciate that.
Dave?
Question for Molly?
Yes.
Is the RTC supporting the extension of light rail from Portland over the bridge to Clark College?
Yes, that decision was made in 2008 and again in 2010. So the decision has been made already.
Reason enough to oppose it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Jennifer?
I don't have any.
Michael?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I was working yesterday, so I'm afraid I was not able to make the Washougal fireworks, but I'm glad to hear that it went off very well.
They look from 30,000 feet.
I actually, you know what, it was about just a little after sunset when I was going into Boise on the 3rd, and they were lighting off a bunch of fireworks there. And the problem is, the closer you get to the ground, the more you have to be concentrating on what you're doing, which is approach and landing the airplane. And if it's way up there, yeah, it doesn't look very spectacular. It's a lot more spectacular to be on the ground amongst a lot of people who are oohing and awing. But also on the SR-14 design, I completely understand the comments that were made by my fellow council members, and I do support the conceptual design. The challenge is simply where the funding comes from and whether it's budgeted for. And if we make decisions as a city that allocate money elsewhere first, my decision is to protect our balances. But having said that, I do support the design, and I certainly hope that it's going to be a good solution for our traffic problems into the future, and I just wanted to put that on the table.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Paul?
I went to the fireworks. This is my fourth consecutive annual Washougal fireworks. And I arrived at 4:30 and stayed through the fireworks. And I was actually home in sitting down with a glass of water by 10 minutes to 11, which is pretty amazing given the traffic problems that we've had before. Special thanks to the Oregon State Police. They did Washington State Patrol.
Where are you watching those fireworks from?
To the Washington State Patrol, they did a great job out there. And also, one of the really noticeable there were a couple of noticeable differences. We used, the mayor arranged private security, and that ended up being a great change. It freed up our police and our public works people to do their regular jobs. We're so shorthanded that if we use them anywhere else, we're pulling them off work that they should be doing. So the private security worked very well. The other thing that was noticeable is that when you're on Cottonwood Beach, you have little groups of people which are spread out in the entire length of the beach. Whereas at the Marina Park, it really was a community that brought everybody together. It was really, truly a wonderful event. The mayor deserves a tremendous amount of credit for bringing this event off. As near as I could tell, without a hitch. It was a beautifully run event, and special thanks to the port, but also to LACMA's Credit Union, which was a major sponsor. They put a significant amount of money on the table to make this happen. So, and there were several other sponsors. So it was a wonderful event and a terrific job by the mayor. Thank you.
Appreciate that. It was a whole lot of other people besides, though. There were,
Oh, I
there were
know,
a lot of
but-
folks in those planning meetings. Rod?
Yeah, Mr. Olson, thanks for the compliments on how well the fire department worked, but I have to tell you, we were stretched very thin last night. And it's a combination of help from neighboring districts that were headed that direction as well, and very pleased that it was just a bush on fire and not somebody's house burning down. You watch the news and you can see how many other communities had problems. As far as down at the port last night, the other thing that the chief had us do was the three of us that were down there covering for medical calls until it got dark, had us out on the port. We had hose lines stretched out as far out as we could get to in case there was any residue from the fireworks that came back. So I think we did a job that was admirable in anybody's eyes as far as covering as much of the city as we could possibly do. Like the chief said, and I'm real proud of the volunteers that stepped up and came in and worked last night. Had a couple of discussions with people down at the port employees. They actually last night did not incur any overtime issues with that last night. Everybody that worked last night down there for the port agreed to take comp time, take time off. So, you know, everybody's fighting their budgets, and they were really proud of the fact that their employees took comp time rather than overtime. They had their stuff set up as much as they could to help the fire department if we needed to. Their barge was right there. Everybody was ready to roll. I think it was really nice that we didn't go down to Cottonwood Beach or Captain Clark Park this year. The mosquito control board couldn't have provided enough spray out there, I don't think, this year. But it was really nice because the wind was just enough to keep the mosquitoes down, and the water was obviously moving. We were out there on that dock and wearing our life jackets and our full turnouts and waiting for anything to happen. But it's truly amazing how fast that river is flowing right now out there. And it's like the guy, the battleground police officer that passed away or drowned. He jumped in the water, and before anybody could get to him, the cold took over. He went under and drowned, and that's just how that river is right now. And we can actually look at that. I think that they were saying last night that we can anticipate this type of water level clear through the last end of August and into September. It's still coming out of Canada yet. So it's a lot of water coming, and I was standing there last night watching the water go by, and I just kept thinking, how much water in any given 5-minute stretch of time is gone past the city of Washougal? It's just amazing how much water goes out by there. But anyway, I was very pleased everything went off last night without a hitch. I think the only issue that I heard from anybody was one way in, one way out. And that's, you know, after the frontage roads are built and the new changes are made out there, I think we'll see a much different situation as far as the traffic. But that was the only glitch. I think the vendors that were there last night were happy. They all made money. They had lines and more lines. And I think there's actually room for some expansion if we have more people down there. I would guess there was easily a couple of thousand people down there last night. somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I know a lot of people kept asking how many were there, and there was just no good way to be able to do any kind of account, especially with a free event, which, you know, just capped it as being very cool, that it was literally free for people to be there.
Right, so, anyway, it was went off without a hitch, I believe, so.
So if you're standing on a dock in full turnouts, as heavy and as bulky as those are, will a life preserver actually do you any good?
They actually tell us, and we, in years past, we went to the Camas Pool, and then our full
Jumped in?
turnouts jumped in, and there's enough there for a while that you're gonna stay afloat, but it's gonna be short-lived, so get a rope to us quickly, but, yeah, we had life jackets, and I believe those are built around, they're XLs, and they're, you know, they're ready to take on that kind of weight.
Yeah, they're
but-
designed just for the firefighter.
They, also, last night, the port said that they had guys out on the breakwaters, they would allow them out there, but you had to have a wristband. Absolutely no fires, no barbecues or anything of any kind inside the port. So I think they, you know, everybody did their homework. And they actually made the comment that there were some things that were done last night, or in preparation, that the port wasn't even ready to do. They just didn't have the staff to do it or the expertise, and as far as getting all the parking stuff set up over in Hamilton, but went well, so.
Any other items? I've got a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Really is amazing.